Welcome, doctors, to this comprehensive review of renal artery stenosis. Today, we are breaking down the high yield pathophysiology, diagnostics, and management strategies you need to dominate this topic on your medical postgraduate entrance exam. Renal artery stenosis is a heavily tested area because it bridges cardiology, nephrology, and vascular surgery. Examiners love to test your understanding of the underlying hemodynamics and how they dictate both clinical presentation and our choice of therapy. Our goal is to move beyond rote memorization. We are going to build absolute conceptual clarity so you can recognize the classic patterns instantly. We will dissect the two vastly different phases of this disease, trace the exact cascade of the renin angiotensin aldosterone system overdrive, and highlight the dangerous clinical traps you must avoid. By the end of this session, you will be able to look at a patient vignette and immediately know whether you are dealing with an older atherosclerotic patient or a young patient with fibromuscular dysplasia, and exactly what the next best step in management should be. Let us dive into the mechanics of the ischemic kidney. Let us lay out the roadmap for how we will conquer this topic. We start at the foundation, which is the hemodynamics and pathophysiology. You cannot memorize your way through renal artery stenosis questions without understanding why the kidney thinks it is starving. From there, we will divide the disease into its two primary pathological phases. This is a classic exam question area. You must be able to contrast atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis against fibromuscular dysplasia. Once we establish who gets the disease, we will cover the clinical manifestations and the specific red flags that should make you suspect a secondary cause of hypertension. We will then transition to the radiologic investigation algorithm, moving from non-invasive first-line screens like duplex ultrasonography all the way to the gold standard of intra-arterial angiography. Finally, we will tackle the complex decisions surrounding medical versus interventional management. You need to know exactly when to rely on aggressive drug therapy and when a patient requires a balloon angioplasty or a permanent metal stent. Keeping this sequence in mind will help you logically work through any clinical scenario. We begin with the core concept defining the ischemic kidney. The fundamental problem in renal artery stenosis is a severe large vessel occlusive disease that drastically reduces the perfusion pressure to the downstream kidney tissue. Look closely at the hemodynamics. A minor narrowing does not cause a systemic problem. For the systemic hemodynamic consequences to be triggered, specifically the massive activation of the renin angiotensin system, the critical luminal occlusion must exceed 70 to 80% of the vessel diameter. This is very important for the exam. If an exam question describes a patient with a 50% narrowing of the renal artery, this alone will not cause the massive secondary hypertension cascade. The blockage must be critical, crossing that 70 to 80% threshold before the perfusion pressure drops low enough to alert the juxtaglomerular apparatus. When that threshold is crossed, the kidney effectively acts as if the patient is bleeding to death, initiating a desperate and ultimately destructive compensatory response to raise systemic blood pressure. Now we must distinguish the two distinctly different phases of renal artery stenosis. This dichotomy is tested constantly. On one side, we have atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis. This is driven by massive systemic cardiovascular risk factors. It is associated with advanced age, dyslipidemia, diabetes, and represents a widespread systemic atherosclerotic burden throughout the body. On the other side is fibromuscular dysplasia. This is a unique primary vascular disorder that is completely non-atherosclerotic. It arises completely independently of standard cardiovascular risks. Interestingly, epidemiological studies show that fibromuscular dysplasia structural anomalies are incidentally discovered in 3 to 5% of completely normal, normotensive people undergoing rigorous screening to become living kidney donors. If an exam question describes an elderly male smoker with high cholesterol and a sudden worsening of blood pressure, this should immediately make you think of atherosclerotic disease. Conversely, If the vignette presents a healthy young individual, usually a female, with severe sudden onset hypertension and absolutely no history of diabetes or cholesterol issues, your mind must immediately jump to fibromuscular dysplasia. Let us trace the pathophysiology of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system overdrive cascade. This is the physiological engine driving the entire disease process. It begins with that critical renal artery occlusion greater than 70%. The juxtaglomerular apparatus inside the affected kidney senses this localized pressure drop as global hypovolemia. The kidney incorrectly assumes the entire body is volume depleted. In response, it unleashes a massive release of renin into the bloodstream. This renin catalyzes a surge in angiotensin 2 levels. Angiotensin 2 is a remarkably potent molecule that acts bilaterally to save the perceived failing circulation. It triggers profound systemic peripheral vasoconstriction and aggressively signals the kidneys to maximize sodium and water retention. The ultimate result of this massive vasoconstriction, combined with extreme fluid retention, is severe secondary systemic hypertension. The irony here is that the systemic blood pressure goes sky high, but because of the physical blockage in the renal artery, the starving kidney still does not receive adequate blood flow, so the cycle continues unchecked. To truly master this pathology, you must understand the severe hemodynamic difference between unilateral and bilateral disease. In unilateral disease, one kidney is ischemic and pumping out massive amounts of renin. This drives up the systemic blood pressure. However, the contralateral healthy kidney feels this high systemic pressure. Because its artery is wide open, the healthy kidney undergoes pressure natriuresis, forcefully excreting the excess sodium and water to compensate. This keeps the fluid volume relatively balanced, even though the blood pressure is high. But bilateral disease represents a catastrophic hemodynamic crisis. In bilateral disease, both renal arteries are blocked. The entire functioning kidney mass of the body is starved for blood. The compensatory mechanism is completely blocked because neither kidney can feel the high systemic pressure. Therefore, neither kidney can undergo pressure natriuresis. The high systemic pressure entirely fails to force adequate blood flow into the renal parenchyma. This leaves the patient trapped in a vicious cycle of runaway renin production with absolutely no safety valve to release the mounting fluid and pressure. Building on the catastrophic nature of bilateral disease, we have to examine the complete loss of pressure natriuresis. Because both kidneys are trapped behind stenotic lesions, they experience decreased renal interstitial hydrostatic pressure. Angiotensin 2 and sympathetic pathways fiercely drive the tubular epithelium to reduce sodium excretion. Since both sides are physically trapped, the body entirely loses its ability to excrete fluid. The system becomes a sealed loop with no exit. As a result, the intravascular volume massively expands, plunging the patient into severe fluid overload. This unrelenting salt and water retention maximizes the cardiac afterload and triggers devastating clinical consequences. The heart is forced to pump against extremely constricted systemic arteries while simultaneously dealing with a massive overload of retained fluid. This exact physiological trap is what drives the most dangerous acute presentations of the disease. You must recognize that the loss of this normal physiological reflex is what shifts bilateral renal artery stenosis from a chronic hypertensive problem into an acute cardiopulmonary emergency. How does this manifest in the clinic? And when should you actively suspect renal artery stenosis? There are 4 major red flags. The first is severe refractory hypertension. These patients often have malignant blood pressures requiring the simultaneous use of 3 or more antihypertensive drugs without achieving clinical control. The second red flag is a sudden, unexplained deterioration of renal function, particularly a sudden renal decline following very minor blood pressure adjustments. The third indicator is accelerated cardiac damage. You will see the rapid development of left ventricular hypertrophy that is entirely disproportionate to how long the patient has reportedly had hypertension. The fourth is target organ emergencies. Watch for the rapid onset of hypertensive encephalopathy or acute visual disturbances driven by retinal hemorrhages. Do not miss this. If an exam question describes a patient taking 4 blood pressure medications at maximum doses whose pressure is still 190 over 110, standard essential hypertension is the wrong answer. You must investigate the renal arteries. One of the most critical clinical manifestations to recognize is the cardiac consequence of this fluid trap, specifically recurrent flash pulmonary edema. The patient presents with sudden overwhelming fluid physically backing up into the pulmonary tree. They are drowning in their own intravascular volume. But here is the paradox that examiners love to test. When you order an echocardiogram, the report comes back showing that the intrinsic left ventricular dysfunction is not severe enough to explain this catastrophic failure. The ejection fraction might be completely normal. This is a massive diagnostic clue. Recurrent congestive heart failure that is unexplained by standard cardiac metrics is a cardinal hallmark of bilateral renal artery stenosis. If a case snap describes a patient coming into the emergency room repeatedly with flash pulmonary edema, but their echocardiogram shows normal left ventricular function, this should immediately make you think of bilateral renal artery disease. The heart is fine, but it simply cannot pump against the extreme afterload and massive volume overload forced upon it by the starving kidneys.